So once you've got a part created in SolidWorks that you're ready to 3D print, first of all, make sure you actually do have a 3D feature and not just a 2D sketch, because that's not going to work. The first thing you're going to need to do is save it off as a different file type. So we're going to hit the File button, probably somewhere in the upper left-hand corner, depending on which computer you're using, and then Save As. We're going to change the name to something that's short and easy to remember and that you'll be able to find again once you load it on the machine. And then we want to make sure that this Save As type is changed so it's not just a SolidWorks part anymore. We want it to be a 3MF, which should be the very first one underneath SolidWorks part. You can also use an STL file, which is way down at the bottom, but 3MF tends to have a bit more detail, so that's what we like to use. You can select that, give it a second to load, make sure that it's in a place you can access again, and then hit Save. Sometimes you'll get this pop-up. We're just going to click OK because for most of the parts that we're printing in here, we're not going to need to worry about it at all. Next, we want to open the Dremel Slicer software. Some computers it might be pinned to the taskbar or on the desktop. In this case, it's in neither of those places, so I'm in the Windows search bar, and I'm just going to type DRE, and you can see that's the first thing that pops up is Dremel software. So you can open that up. Once in Dremel, this is the setup you should see. If you're on the recommended settings, you might see fewer things over here. We want them to be on custom, so you can fix that right away. And you can see this is simulating the bed of our 3D printers, so we want to get our part to actually show up in here. We can do this by selecting the Open File button off on the left-hand side, and then navigating through to wherever you saved it. So I'm just going to find mine here, and then once I have it, I can click on it and click Open. You can see mine popped up where it definitely was not supposed to, so I'm going to show you how to fix that. Once you click on the part, you can see that these buttons over on the left show up. You can move it, you can scale it to make it bigger or smaller, you can rotate it, and you can mirror it depending on what you need to do. The first thing I want to do is move it, so I'm just going to shift it by clicking and dragging these arrows until it shows up on the build plate. And you can see it's still not quite liking that because it's got these hashed lines. So I'm going to click it again, then go to my rotate tool and drag this and twist it around until it fits how I want it to. So after a little bit of finagling, I finally got this positioned where I want to. And you can, if you hold down the right button on your mouse, you can drag this around and look at it from all sorts of different angles like I am. Just gonna move this a little bit. Sometimes it takes a while to get this to where you want it to be. But this is looking good in terms of placement on the build plate to me. So now we're gonna check a couple of these settings over in Print Setup. The material you're not gonna worry about because our printers are going to override it anyways. The profile, you can change this anywhere from low quality all the way up to ultra quality. I will say that the higher your quality goes, the longer it's going to take. I usually stick around medium quality, and we're just going to tell it to keep all those because we're going to change all of these settings manually anyways. Quality we just changed up here, which is fine. Shell we're not worried about. Infill right now is at 15%. Because this is just kind of a part that's not going to be holding any weight, it doesn't really matter what infill's at, but a standard for 3D printing is 20, so that's what I'm going to change it to. That's just the amount of the inside of the part that's actually solid plastic versus kind of a patterned honeycomb shape that I'll show you later. All of these settings under material are going to be overridden once they go into the printer, so we're not going to worry about those either. The only other things you should have to worry about are support and build plate adhesion. As a rule of thumb, I always use skirt for build plate adhesion because it kind of purges the nozzle before it actually starts working on your part, so if there's anything funky going on, you can catch it right away. And support, the general rule of thumb is if you have any piece that's hanging over a 45-degree angle, it needs support to hold it up as it's printing. Once again, I've got a really standard piece that's just flat, so I'm going to uncheck the generate support button, and that'll be totally fine for what I'm doing. Once you've got that, you can click the prepare button way down in the right, and this will actually slice it, and now it's going to give you a preview of the time it thinks it's going to print, the amount of material it's going to use, the dimensions of your part, and the name of your part. So what this is at right now, F22, that's fine. I can recognize that. Otherwise, you can click the little edit pencil and it'll allow you to change that. One thing that I always like to do before I print is to check, is this actually building up the way I want it to? I can do that by selecting the little eyeball button over here and then clicking layers. And then I can drag this slider up and down to see how my layers are being built up. This little cross hatching you see here is the infill I was talking about. You can see down there, that's solid plastic, but now it starts to go back and forth and create those little squares. I don't know how well you can see this on the camera, but that's the infill. And I can just drag this slider up and down and look all at that, and it looks good to me. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to save it to a USB stick. So over by the printers, all of the tools that you should need throughout this process are going to be sitting right at the right end of this cabinet. There should be a white styrofoam cup that says USBs somewhere on it, and this is where all the USBs sit. So there's just 2 in here right now. I'm going to grab one of those that I know will work and then bring it back with me to the computer. Once I've got the USB, you should see this save to removable drive down in the right hand corner. Once again, if everything looks good and you're ready to go, you can select that. It'll tell you that it saved it as that name, and if everything looks good, you can then hit eject and remove the USB and then go over to the printers. On most build nights, the printers will already be on and set up, but if they're not, the power button is on the right-hand lower side of the machine, so you can flip that up to turn it on, and then put the USB you're using into the USB slot on the front of the machine while it boots up. Once the printer's booted up, you should see this home screen or something similar to it, depending on which printer you're using. You can then click the build button, and it will give you a couple options on where to select your file from. If you're using the USB, like I suggest, it should be this middle button that looks like a USB. Then you can use these arrows to navigate up and down to your part. You do have to be kind of aggressive with this touch screen. Once you find your part, you can click on it and it'll give you this preview screen. Everything with these nozzle temperatures and platform temperatures and the timer looks good to me and matches what the computer was showing me, so I'm going to click the build button. Once this copying file screen leaves, you can actually pull the USB out and put it somewhere where somebody else can use it, because now that file is on the machine and it's going to start its calibrating and preheating process. Once the preheating screen shows that it's within 20 to 10 degrees of the target temperature is when you want to place the glue down. So the glue should be off to the right-hand side of the cabinet, and you can place a generous amount right onto the bed that's going to take up the amount of space that whatever part you're creating will be sitting on. And like I said, a generous amount doesn't hurt, because otherwise it could lift mid-print, and that's not going to be good. Once you've got it on there, you can close it up, and the second that these circles both reach completion, it should start printing all by itself. And then because we put a skirt on here, it might not actually start extruding filament right away, but that's the purpose of the skirt. So you just watch it until it looks like it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. If it starts to make funny noises or anything, you can stop it and start it over. So once your print is finished, you're going to get this accept screen. You can just click the accept button, And then you can open up the printer, and how you get this out of here is you can put your fingers under the blue piece on the side and use your thumb to pull the black pieces forward. Kind of need two hands to do it, so I can't do it right now for you, but then you kind of pull it out and up because it's hooked on pieces back here. Then you can take one of the blue and black scrapers from the side, take it over to the sink, get your piece off, make sure you get all of the glue residue off, and then pop it back in so somebody else can use it.